Okay, I think let's go ahead and get started. Thank you all who are joining us this morning. I'm Gail Vanderstoop with the Michigan Lighthouse Alliance and have served on the board for a lot of years. I'm recently retired from Michigan State University, but have been involved in maritime things for a very, very long time. So today I'd like to say happy Fat Tuesday, happy Mardi Gras, whatever holiday you choose for this to be. So thank you very much for spending some of this morning with the Michigan Lighthouse Alliance. We would like to welcome you to the second of our 3 webinars this spring. We're trying to offer some additional services to people interested in lighthouses so that we can be in touch with folks more frequently than just our every 2 years in-person conference. So welcome for today. Today's session is on strategic planning, and every person's context is different. And so you always have to take into consideration your own site when you're doing strategic planning and the resources you have available, etc. So just a few, before we get started, just a few next comments on instructions for the Zoom. Probably everyone is totally familiar with this by now, but you can ask questions in the chat room when you have them, or you can do them live. If you have something that is a burning, that's a burning question for you at the moment, go ahead and you can try to do this, but we won't necessarily see everybody on the screen. So if you'll use your reactions at the bottom of the toolbar in the bottom and just do the raise hand, that will pop your screen to the top and we will see that you have a question. Then we can actively look in the chat for what the question is, or you can ask it verbally online. But you will probably have to remember to unmute yourself to ask a question verbally. The chat window, I put in a couple of links to resources, and we can add as we go through the webinar. If you're having any technical difficulties, please put those into the chat as well. I have email turned off so it won't bing in all the time. The presentation is being recorded, and there will be a link to the recording that will be sent to all registrants afterwards. So I hope you enjoy this presentation. Think of questions, and we'd like to be as interactive as possible. So now I would like to introduce Shiloh. Shiloh Holley is the principal consultant of Aderworks, LLC, and has over 15 years of experience working with small nonprofits, which of course, lighthouse organizations pretty much are all small nonprofits. And she's worked with folks mostly in arts, culture, and parks and recreation. And her expertise is assisting these small organizations find and leverage their own unique strengths to create a bigger impact on their audiences and their communities. Shiloh has a Bachelor of Arts in Art History from Wittenberg University in Springfield, Ohio, and a Master of Arts in Art History and Museum Studies from the University of Illinois at Chicago. Aderworks was founded in Detroit in 2022 and has clients in Michigan and New York City. Her work as a museum practitioner has been recognized by the American Alliance of Museums, the National Trust for Historic Preservation, and Virginia Humanities. So I will let Shiloh take it away. Again, if you have questions, use the raise hand function in the toolbar, and you can put your questions either verbally or put them in the chat room.
All right. Hi. Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, and be prepared. She has a couple of polls with questions too.
Yes,
so
that's
just be
true.
prepared to engage.
Yeah. So hi, again, my name is Shiloh. I'm so thrilled to be here today. I am also thrilled to be continuing either this series or talking a little bit more about fund development at the in-person conference in April. That's a little teaser. So we'll talk a little bit about that later. But I was designing this presentation because I am familiar with small organizations. There's never enough time, there's never enough people, and there's never enough money. So I have gone through a few different strategic planning processes with a few other small organizations and have developed some tips and strategies that I hope you guys can employ while you're going through your own strategic planning processes. And it's exactly right. Each process is unique. Each organization is unique, but hopefully I can give you some strategies today to either get started or revamp your existing strategic plan. And you don't always need that very expensive consultant to help you put the plan together. So that's a little bit what we're going to talk about today. So today's session, I have a few or a few slides where I'm going to talk through some things. There will be some polls just so I can get to know and understand where you and your organization are with strategic planning. And then at the end, hopefully there'll be some time for more of an interactive session and we can workshop some of the things that we've talked about. So again, my name is Shiloh Holley. I've worked in museums all my professional life. Most recently, I was executive director of a historic house in New York City. You can see that one there in the middle. That museum was a part of a network of historic sites, which also operated the Little Red Lighthouse that you can see on the right here. And I currently have a retainer client in New York City that operates the Robbins Reef Lighthouse. So I see that we have someone from New Jersey. Joseph is with us, so I'm sure you're familiar with both of these lighthouses since they're essentially in your backyard. So again, thrilled to be here and just kind of ironic that just recently I've been working with two other lighthouse organizations. All right, so poll time. We are going to launch a series of 3 polls. They're back to back, and this is just so I can get an overview of where everyone is with having a current strategic planning, if you are getting ready to embark on that process, and what you think the barriers are to planning. So you can scroll down and see all those 3 questions there at the same time. So we'll give you a few minutes to answer.
Does everybody see the poll? Okay.
Yeah, I see results coming in now. Let's see. Okay, we have 5 responses out of 8 people who are here with us. Okay, great. I'm just going to make notes here while the results are coming in. So we have, most people do have a strategic plan. One does not, a few are unsure. And most of you are 75% of you will be planning in the next year. So great, you're in the right place. And time is the #1 barrier to strategic planning, followed by money to hire the consultant. Great. So do you guys see these results or do we need to? Are they up?
They are up.
Okay, perfect. Great. So again, most of you have a plan. Most of you are getting ready to go through it again, and time and money are the biggest barriers. Okay. Oh, I think I can just leave that up. Okay. So thank you so much for that. So now I kind of wanted to go over why planning is so important. And you guys may know this. You seem like you're a seasoned group. You have a plan or you're getting ready to go into this process, which is great. But strategic planning informs your programmatic goals, your financial needs, your board and committee tasks, staffing gaps, when you may or may not want to hire a consultant for something like grant writing or program development, and any fundraising ask and plans. So strategic planning is really the crux of your mission-driven work. It's not a plan to sit on the shelf, but it should be at the table at every single discussion that you're having at the board level, volunteer level, and staff planning level. And with good planning, like hopefully what you'll learn today, you can make it this way. And just a small note about the fundraising. I know that small organizations, that's one of the resources that you can never really have enough of is getting that money through the door. But I'm in the process of becoming a certified fundraising executive. And one of the things that we are learning is that you can't create a fundraising plan without a strategic plan. That strategic plan has to come first. So it really is the linchpin in which everything else revolves around. And kind of thinking about it, it's now that I'm so steeped into planning that the organizations in which I've worked for that didn't have that strategic plan, they are the ones that were struggling the most. They had issues with governance. They had issues with fundraising. They had issues with keeping staff. So like really having a plan where everyone's on the same page really helps you inform and move forward with every other different area of the organization. And someone mentioned this one time, not having a strategic plan is like traveling to a new city without a map or a compass. You don't really know how to get there. You don't know where you're going, and you're just kind of lost. All right, some additional reasons for planning. A strategic plan can improve your performance and impact on your community. It can help you qualify for funding. Some funders even ask for a copy of your strategic plan or where you are in your strategic planning process. It can help you be accredited for something like AAM, if that's something that your organization is interested in. It can prepare the groundwork for expansion and new initiatives. Either that's building a visitor center or creating new programs. It can help motivate staff and board. It replaces old plans that have run its course. Oops, sorry. It can address forces of change like COVID, or if you have a new arts organization coming to your town, a new museum opened, how does that impact your organization? And it's also it provides the opportunity to build partnerships. And this can even be partnerships with funders. And I want to share one thing that I read last night. Funders are so important, especially to strategic planning. And Matthew Brown, who's the director of development at AAM, states that funders care about your institutional plan because it's the best way to determine the level of professionalism of your organization and your leadership. So sometimes it's not so much about what's in the plan, but your organization has the capacity and ability to pull off this feat, if you will, of getting everyone on the same page and moving forward together as an organization as a whole. All right, so where do we start? So I've broken this down to the who, what, when, where, and how. So with the who, you could do it with 2 leaders, maybe hire a consultant, and your community. And so, one second, I need to find my notes for this one. Oh, my notes went missing for some reason. Let me just double check. Okay, so off the cuff here, you need 2 leaders, and these leaders need to be someone who are, oh my gosh, all my notes are missing. I'm so sorry. I had this recapped in another slide. Okay, so 2 leaders. So you need to find 2 to 3 people who can serve in various roles, and we'll go over those roles in a second. But these leaders need to be someone who kind of can step back from the organization. They can put the needs of others in the community over their own. And you may want to hire a consultant. The consultant can help you do several different things. They can keep you organized, they can do the admin, and they can also act as a facilitator. But as small organizations, it sometimes, takes more resources to engage a consultant, so it may or may not be right for you. You may also be at a point where you just need a plan to move forward, and a consultant may or may not slow down that process. So it really depends on where you are and one of the most important things with strategic planning is ensuring that you have voices from the community. So if you feel like your 2 to 3 leaders who have been charged with developing the plan have the ability to take in consideration of the community, which is also a role that a consultant can do, you may not need that. And you may just need to put your ideas on paper. And in 3 to 5 years, when you're going through planning again, you can involve an advisory committee or engage in a consultant just to ensure that you're checking what your organization is doing and if you are fulfilling the needs for the community. Okay, so what do you need? You can do this in 3 to 4 meetings as long as you're preparing. So you can even condense 1 to 2 meetings into an all-day retreat. One of these meetings will be so that would be 1 to 2. The next one would be sharing out at a full board meeting if your board members are not all involved in the strategic planning process. And another one, the fourth would be approval. So really you can have 1 to 2 really robust working sessions, and the other 2 are more administrative. One where you're sharing out with the rest of the board, and then another one where you're getting approval from the board. And as long as you stay organized, you can really do this pretty streamlined and efficiently. You can take as long or as little as you want. I recommend 3 months. Maybe you do 1 meeting a month, and that would be a pretty condensed process. But also drawing it out and having it take more time allows you to have other perspectives of you're going through delivering school programs at the same time as you're developing a strategic plan. So you kind of are having the plan come along with you on your day-to-day activities of the organization, which may or may not, which should hopefully inform the plan that you're working on. So I do recommend doing it in 6 months, and you can do it in little doses. It doesn't have to be the only activity that an organization is undertaking at one point in time. Where now we have Zoom, so you can do this virtually, or you can do it in person at a retreat or at a museum or at your site or somewhere offsite. And how? By using some of the tools that I'm going to be talking about today and some other external resources, you can pretty efficiently execute strategic planning. All right, so now I'm going to tell you my strategic planning nightmare. So I was the executive director of an organization that was getting ready to go through AAM reaccreditation. It was a long story, but we had a lot riding on the accreditation. We were actually not accredited for a period of time due to some collections issues. So the tension was very high. AAM was coming, we were getting our ducks in a row. And at the time, I had a board chair who did not believe in strategic planning. And she refused to go through the process with the board and with the community. And we had all these other plans. We had a marketing plan, we had a development plan, we had a collections interpretation plan, we had a furnishing plan. But remember what I said earlier, you can't have those other plans without having a strategic plan because you don't know where you're going. So we, after being unsuccessful in appealing to AAM, we have all these other plans. Why do we need a strategic plan? They came down pretty hard with the hammer, and they said, you have to have a strategic plan. This is one of the 5 tenets of accreditation. So essentially what we did is that I rallied around other board members. We had a conversation, and we were actually able to leverage some funding through a technical assistance program that a longtime funder that we had, they were opening up. So we were able to get free strategic planning assistance through this technical assistance program. And finally, the board chair was like, fine, we're getting it for free. Everyone else wants to do it, we'll do it. So we went through a pretty grueling, it took us, I guess, close to 12 months. This was during COVID, to go through the strategic plan. and get it to a point where AAM was like, yes, this is where it needs to be. So a lot of the things that I'm going to be talking about in a little bit are kind of my lessons learned from my strategic planning nightmare of turning a board who didn't believe into strategic planning to having it be a must-have for the organization, and really putting together through something called tactical planning, a roadmap for the organization that everyone could follow. All right, so this is how you get started. You need everyone to agree that there's a need. And then you can pick those 2 to 3 facilitators. Again, these are people who are able to step back from their normal role in the organization, see multiple perspectives. They're able to listen, and they're able to stay organized and really help. And they're able to be cheerleaders to help the organization through the process. And then you're going to engage a committee or task force. For some of you, this may be simple. It may just be your board. For some of you with larger boards, it may be a few people from that board. But this is with the facilitators being on this committee, I recommend about 6 to 7 people. If your board's 8, fine, go with your board. Sometimes it's easier just to have the board at the table at the same time. But it's just really up to you. But as long as you have those 2 to 3 people who are acting as the facilitators and able to bring the rest of the committee along through this process, you should be fine. And as long as your facilitators have the right characteristics needed to lead the group, you do not need to hire a consultant. You all need to know what's needed. And I'll talk a little bit about in a little bit the key components of a strategic plan. So you just have to be clear about the various aspects of planning with the whole group. You create a timeline and select meeting dates. And I recommend doing this from at the first meeting, because once you have those, you can always adjust them, but it's easier to get something on the books from the beginning. Even if you're planning 6 months out, then all of a sudden, like, oh my God, we need to meet in 2 weeks. So just kind of making your game plan at that first planning meeting is essential. You can get invigorated. Strategic planning is really exciting. And as long as you have those people, the facilitators who are the cheerleaders, it's really easy to have to keep up the energy throughout the whole strategic planning process. Another point is to keep the community and audience central. So this may mean several different things, either having a community member on your strategic planning committee. If you have an advisory committee, having someone from there on your strategic planning committee. You may even want to do an optional planning session with members of the community. So you may invite your volunteers, you might invite teachers, you might invite the people, even some people on your mailing list. But as long as you have mechanisms to keep the community and audience central to your planning activities, you will be successful. You have to remember that a strategic plan is not for the board. It's to help you uphold your mission. And also, as long as you're able to find and turn to resources to support each other to get through the process, you will be successful. Okay, so a little bit more about the facilitators. Again, this can be 2 to 3 people. And here in the task column, I've talked about the 4 different essentials that are needed. And you can see the A, B, and C. Some roles can be the same, some cannot be the same. So there's a person A, B, and C. So you need someone communicating with the full group, someone taking notes, someone that's updating the templates with those notes, and then you have someone asking questions, which is usually not the same person doing the first 3, but it can be. And then you may also have a third person, which is the person C that could be doing some of these things. So it's kind of like triangulating what makes sense for who. The important characteristics for all 2 of these 3 people is that they are able to keep things confidential. They're able to lead with integrity. They're accountable. They can provide that 360-degree perspective. They're out in the community or have the ability to pull those resources from the community when it's needed, and they can ignore their own personal aspirations. So another tip that I have, if you feel like you don't have these people in your organization and you want an external facilitator, you have an option of hiring a consultant or hiring someone to just come in and facilitate those meetings, or you can do something that I call buddy up and reciprocate. So if you find another organization that's going through strategic planning, you can spot facilitators. So you could be the facilitator at their strategic planning sessions if they are able to reciprocate to be the facilitator at your strategic planning session. So this is just kind of a way, if you're going through it together, you know, you're doing the same thing, you can go alongside each other and help each organization's plan in different ways and bring in different perspectives. So even if you aren't local to another lighthouse organization, you have a network of people who are getting ready to go through strategic planning right now. I think 75% of you said that you're getting ready to go through strategic planning in the next year. So if you're a small organization without a lot of funding and you don't necessarily feel confident in internally selecting these facilitators, you might want to explore buddying up with another organization who's going through planning. And if that person is willing to lead at these core meetings, which we'll talk about in a little bit, they could lead those core meetings for you if you will lead those core meetings for them. Any questions so far before we dig into what's exactly in a strategic plan? Okay, I'll move forward. So key elements. So you'll see that there are 3, 6, 8 things here. Two of them are in italics, and they're not always needed. It's recommended that they're there, but they're not always needed. The first and foremost thing is a mission statement. And some people think, oh, I have the mission statement, I can check that box. But you, at these planning meetings, you need to reaffirm that mission statement, that mission still makes sense for you. And then after mission comes vision and values. Some organizations already have these, some do not. It is a good exercise to kind of go through the visioning process and the value process, even if the board decides not to adopt a vision statement or values. It is still very beneficial to go through these to kind of understand, one, as a vision, where you want your organization to be in 3 to 5 years and what your values may be. Your values might be community, it might be access, it might be transparency. But the vision and values can really just further your strategic plan, and they're there to support your mission-driven work. The next is a SWOT, and that acronym means strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And this is an exercise where you're just throwing those things out there and writing them down. And then from that, you can draw your goals and objectives. So you're using your strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats to formulate the next component, which is your goals and how you're going to achieve those goals. Tactical planning goes a little bit more in depth than goals and objectives. It has action steps. It identifies the resources needed, like how much money it's going to take to pull off that program, how that program is going to be staffed. And it also provides your metrics for success. So let's say you want to raise attendance by 30%. How are you going to do that? How do you measure? Do you have a tally sheet when visitors come in? Do you have a ticketing system? So this kind of really just goes through taking those goals and objectives and filtering them down to very, very targeted and specific action steps. And that give you every single thing that you need to know to be able to pull off those actions. You'll see that I have resource and metrics in italics here. Some organizations are so small that it doesn't make sense to go through these things because you have a staff of 2, or you have a budget of, $50,000 and you're essentially relying on volunteer labor. So it's a great exercise to go through, but it's not always needed. Another important key component, probably the most important thing, is the approval. You need to have a board resolution approving the strategic plan. And more than that, you need to make sure that every single person on that board and your community and on the strategic planning committee is comfortable with the plan and happy with how it came out. And if they're not, then you haven't done your planning properly. And that's why it's so important to, in those facilitator roles, to have someone who's able to really lead the group with integrity and making sure that all voices are being heard. And finally, you just need a summary of planning activities, which is kind of, we met on this date to discuss our vision. The vision was the mission was reaffirmed. At the next meeting on this date, we did the SWOT analysis, and these people were in attendance. And a lot of funders are actually asking for these summaries of planning activities now in grant applications. And it's just a great thing to have when you're looking back and doing strategic planning again in 5 years to see how and what the organization did and see if there's areas for improvement or if it was just a very simple and streamlined process that you would like to replicate. Okay, so now I want to revisit our poll. So before we talked about, before the results were that you felt like time and money were the biggest barriers to strategic planning. So I'm curious, once we launch the poll again, after just very briefly hearing an overview about strategic planning, if that's still the case. Yes, you can relaunch the poll now. Thank you. Yeah, Christopher, I see your note. I can talk about that in a second. We're just waiting for the results to come in. Are you guys seeing the same polls as the first time? Doesn't, if you are, just scroll down to number 3. It doesn't matter. It's the same question. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, we have 4 responses come in. Give it 1 more minute. Okay, I'm going to end the poll. So the results are, time is still number 1. Money, no one said money, which I'm so thrilled to hear. Which is kind of ironic because I am a consultant, but I'm telling you not to hire a consultant. But some organizations you can be successful planning on your own without hiring a consultant. So thank you so much for that. Christopher in the chat, very, very good point. Resources and metrics aren't really optional. You need to clearly see where you are from budget, overhead, planned income, and inventory perspective. Yes, you're exactly right. But my point was, if you have objectives and action steps that are appropriate for your organization, you may not need to drill down to find those things. And I can show you a little bit more what I mean if we look at, if in the workshop you want to look at the tactical planning part that we'll do in part 2. So happy to talk about that more. So here I have listed some resources for strategic planning. You will get a copy of these slides later on, but the first 2 are books that AAM have published or are Central Museum books, Manual for Strategic Planning and Secrets of Institutional Planning. They're small. You can read them in a day. Sorry, the blur is blurring them out. The third one is a pamphlet. I think it's about 4 pages. It's DIY strategic planning for small museums. All these were published about 15 years ago, but they're still pretty applicable. I would say that the one thing that has changed in planning in the last 15 years is there seems to be more community-led strategic planning happening right now versus when these books were written. So we talked about a little bit about how central the community's voices is to planning, but some organizations are actually doing strategic planning where the board isn't really involved until the community is leading the planning and then getting the board involved. So it's kind of an inside out mechanism that is being used in some organizations. So that's not really reflective in these books. These books are more very traditional strategic planning and more in line with what I'm recommending for you, because as we all know, getting to the community advisory board, having those meetings, that's all resources, and that's really feeding into what you feel like your crunch is with those times. So as long as you have the mechanisms to get the community's voices heard in the strategic planning, it'll be a great plan. I'd also encourage you to look at the board source website. And then if you're just really dying for more strategic planning and how strategic planning and leadership affects the whole organization, there's something called the Nonprofit Leadership Lab. It's a professional development virtual group. It's just fantastic. I think it's like $30 a month and you get access to all these materials. I was a member for, I don't know, a few years when I was going through my strategic planning nightmare situation. And it's a great network of nonprofit professionals all across the country. And then lastly, I just want to share a little bit about the strategic planning toolkit that my consulting firm has developed. So this is a toolkit that's uniquely customized for historic sites and history organizations with all that you need to complete your own strategic planning process. So it comes with an instruction manual that's 13 pages that's going to tell you exactly how to do it, when to do it. There's a plug and play strategic planning toolkit. So that kind of just has all the basic language. So you're going to you would insert your mission statement here. You would write a few notes about why your mission is important. So it's mostly a template where you're dragging and dropping the stuff that you've done throughout the strategic planning into a page or into a document that results in a strategic plan. And then there's agendas and guiding questions for all meetings. There's the 3 or 5 year tactical planning template and worksheets. So that gets Christopher at your question. These are the worksheets that's identifying the budget and who's doing what, and so on and so forth. That's in the tactical plan. There's a completed sample tactical plan, so you can kind of see that in action, additional resources and guides, and then you can also get up to an hour of support and guidance from my firm to help you complete your strategic plan. If you want help wordsmithing or editing the final document, that's what's in this package. All right, so we have, I would say, about 12 minutes. And now we can move into part 2. So I have developed 3 different exercises. And you guys can choose. We can put in the chat or you can raise your hand. If someone feels really strongly, we can jump into one. Maybe we'll have time for 2. So we can do a mission, vision, and values exercise where we're taking a look at how you would verify your mission statement and maybe even change it and rewrite it. We can do listing strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. and we can translate those into goals. Or we can go over the tactical planning sheet, which takes the goals and objectives and drills them down and identifies resources and action steps for the day-to-day operations of the museum or lighthouse. Does anyone have a preference? Tactical planning, SWOT goals. All right, we might need a tiebreaker. The most complicated, that's probably tactical planning for sure. So let me just briefly, if this sounds okay, I'm going to briefly show you SWOT to goals, and then we can dig into tactical planning. Does that sound good to everyone? Okay, great. So I'm skipping over our mission. Okay, so SWOT. So typically this is portrayed in a quadrant. You have an SWOT quadrant: strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. Strengths are internal and positive. So that's internal to your organization and generally a good thing. Weaknesses are internal but negative. Opportunities are external and positive. So let's say, and this I used this example earlier. So let's say you have a new art museum in your town. Some people might think that that is an opportunity because there's partnerships, but it also might be a threat because people might be going to the new shiny museum instead of coming to the lighthouse. So those are both external forces, and they can be positive and negative, and you can put them, it can be both. So what you would do, you would just kind of popcorn where everyone you're in a workshop setting and people are throwing, you would go quadrant by quadrant. You would throw out strengths, you would throw out weaknesses, opportunities, threats. And the facilitator's role is to verify, to make sure, like kind of check, is this internal? Is it external? Is it positive or negative? So making sure that it's going in the right quadrant. And then you can take one. So like, let's say, this is hard because we were going to do this together. Let's say that let's use that the art museum opening in your town. So we would use that as a way to talk about, either decide collectively as a group when we're moving over to objectives. Do we want to offer is there a marketing cross promotion thing where we're offering $1 off to people who are coming to the museum? Are we creating a partnership with the museum for programming? Are we going to hire a marketing consultant to do an ad blitz campaign so people don't forget about us? So like that one small thing of the art museum opening in your town, there can be various goals or various objectives that your group decides to do because you see that that situation coming. So that's just one small example of like when you have something that's identified in one of these quadrants, kind of thinking it through and how in identifying a response to either take advantage of that opportunity or counteract that threat, depending on where it lands in the quadrant. Does that make sense? Okay, any other comments about SWOT to objectives? Okay, so I will move on to tactical planning. First, let's look at this link. Do you guys see this? I switched from my presentation. Great. Thank you, Joseph. Yeah, I switched from the presentation to this Google Sheet. So this is a tactical planning template. If you are interested in that toolkit, this is one of the components of it. So essentially, this is an Excel spreadsheet. You don't have to set it up. You just plug and play your stuff here and you're good to go. So you would pull over here, you just list the date that you're working on this document. You pull out your mission that has been confirmed. If you developed a vision, you pull that over. If you, and then you'd pull over your goals. So talking about, you know, kind of synthesizing everything that your organization is going through. So let's continue using the same example. You know, we may have some marketing challenges because there's this new museum opening up across the street. So one of your goals might be to strengthen the lighthouse's presence in the community. And of course, you want to get a little bit more specific than this. If more specific you can is better, because that really helps you drill down more and more. So, and I think this is a goal that everyone can relate to. And you may even want to go so far as, so like maybe you're not concerned with your community, but maybe it's more of getting visitors, an appeal to tourists. And then your objective here, sorry, you can't see this very well, but it might be, one objective would be to increase visitation by 10%. Rationale, more visitors means more engagement. You know, this is very, I'm just doing very top level right now. And then an outcome and metric would be, so we could even put numbers on it. So it'd be like 20,000 visitors to, what, 22,000 visitors. And then, so here is, you're really talking about your tactics. So how are you going to do that? So this may be, you might do weekly Facebook posts. The 2-for-1 admission deal. Can anyone think of any other ways that we're growing our attendance? Let's just throw one more out there. Maybe we add a lecture program. So develop more programming. Or maybe this is launching new school program. Okay, and then here you would list the priority for each low, medium, high. And this just kind of provides direction for your boots on the ground staff or volunteers. So let's say, you know, we're probably going to get more people if we do this 2-for-1 admission deal. Let's put that as high. Weekly Facebook posts, they're pretty time consuming, but they're important. Let's do that a medium. We do want to develop more programs, but that's even more time intensive. Let's put that as a low, and maybe we're looking for grants to figure out how we can get the resources to do that. And then here I have this divided up into 3 years, 2021, 2, and 3. So it'd be the 3 or 5 years of your strategic planning session. And maybe 2021 actions for Facebook post. So on Wednesday, Lisa is going to you know, post about this, but January we're going to talk about this. So this is just kind of where you're getting to that really, really granular level of what you're doing in creating weekly Facebook posts, which is going to bring more visitors and increase your visitation and strengthen the lighthouse's presence in the community. So it's kind of a trickle down effect. So after actions, you have the people that are assigned to it. I have a column for staff time. So this might be, this is an hour a week, and this is how much money it's going to take. And through this, you can pull that over to other tabs that I have here just to make sure you are not overstretching your staff and all of a sudden assigned 7 things that will take 40 hours a week, and you only have that person for 20 hours a week, and they also have to do like meet the visitors at the door. So it's kind of just a check and balances. Exactly what Christopher is talking about here is why this tactical planning is so important, because you're listing out the resources and just ensuring that you're able to properly pull off what you want to pull off. And it gives you the choice to kind of go back and make sure that what you're listing as your tactics make the most sense for your objective and goals. So when I said that this is optional, you may be in an organization where you are not doing that much programming, or your tactic may be, your objective may be to improve governance or to get more board members. So your tactic may be you know each board member is networking once a month or something like that. So like, it doesn't, I understand that you're not all fully staffed museums with, where you're going to have like 40, where you have 10 staff members working 40 hours a week, and you can do the math and pull it through. But each organization is a little bit different, and your tactical planning process might be a little bit different than a larger organization who's like counting staff hours and assigning certain people to things, and figuring out where grant money is coming from to pull off that project. And then the last thing here on this one is just the evaluation. So this one is fairly easy. So this is the Facebook post one. So you would here write a note about monthly taking a look at Facebook analytics and seeing how many people are liking the post. Are they liking certain posts? Do they like when they talk about your lighthouse, or do they like when you're talking about a program? So this is just kind of how you are measuring if you are being successful in what you are outlining or what you are saying that you're going to do. And so your baseline here, you might have 2,000 followers right now. So you would put that, and maybe one of your evaluations is to bring that up to 3,000. So you could also put that here in your evaluation. So it's whatever metric you are using to know that these things that you're doing are successful. You can just write a note about the status. So like, this is in progress, this is ongoing, and any other notes that you made. And this can be fully customizable to whatever your organization needs it. So I got the 5-minute warning. I'm just going to quickly go through how everything in this sheet gets pulled over. So if you are interested in like making sure you're not overburdening your staff or volunteers, that's kind of what these things do. So this kind of once you start populating it, it'll make more sense. But there's a sheet for key projects by department. So over here in key people, you can also divide it by department and pull stuff over, so you know which department is doing what thing. Or if you want to do it by person, you have each staff role here and what they're doing, and you can add up the numbers, and there's formulas in here to make that possible. So let's say, Scott is doing our Facebook post, but he's also the one that's developing the school programs. So it would pull over his numbers to make sure that, his volunteer commitment isn't exceeding, what everyone expects of him. And then lastly, there's just a timeline. This is another AAM requirement that's like, we're going to do task number 1 in these months and task number 16 in these months. So this is all a part of that tactical planning document. All right, so I'm going to switch back over, and Just a note again that I will be at the in-person conference in April. I can continue with some more strategic planning workshops if you guys are interested. I also have a grant writing and capacity building for small organizations workshop that I can do. So if you're interested in either one of those, just put it in the chat. I'd be happy. I have, I think, like 4 more days to decide what my topic's going to be. So if you're just dying to do more strategic planning, put that in the chat. Or if you're more interested in grant writing and capacity building, I'd be happy to talk more about that too in April. All right, and that brings us full circle and talking a little bit more about the conference.
Well, first, thank you, Shiloh, very much. I'm going to give just a couple of reminders, and then if folks want to stay on to talk with Shiloh or ask questions or whatever, but we want to respect people's time. As Shiloh said, the conference is going to be in April 21 through 23 in Port Huron. Shiloh is one of our presenters, and she's wanting input about where she should focus her limited time at the conference. Also, we want to provide you the opportunity to register for our very last webinar in the 3-webinar series, which is focused on Lighthouse funding, donors, and goal setting and grants. And that will be presented by Buzz Herr and Lou Schillinger, both of whom are on this webinar today if you want to chat and meet with them. But you can register for both of them at the MichiganLighthouseAlliance.org website. I put those emails in at the very beginning of the chat, but I can re-enter that. And also, I would like to thank you for coming today. This recording will be posted probably by the end of the week, hopefully sooner, but at least by the beginning of next week, it will be posted if you want to watch anything again. And I guess that's all. If anybody has any questions, or if anybody wants to stay and ask Shiloh some individual questions, please do.
And Chris, I saw your question. So just in terms of how robust a strategic planning can be, it should be as robust as you need it to be. So I work for an organization that had a budget of about $500,000. We only limited it to 4 goals because we were small. I know a lot of you are a lot smaller than that, but we were small. We had limited staff, and we identified the 4 key buckets that we needed to work on. And I can show you. We had a lot of action steps within those 4 main buckets, but see if I can, this is not getting big enough. Okay, goal number 1, strengthen audience and community engagement. 2, deepen the experience, which is more about like our education programs. Goal 1 was more visitor services. Goal 3, prepare the museum for a sustainable future. That was fundraising. And 4, effective governance. And that was governance. So we were really only focused on like 4 main buckets: our front of the house museum, education programs, fundraising, and governance. And we also tried to limit it to like 3 or 4 within each of those goals. So like we had 12 objectives. And we were doing that just to make sure that what we were creating was doable. And I know I see your quote about SLH steps being 40 tasks and 7 categories, but you know, for us where we were, we needed to make sure that we created something that was doable for us, and we decided on 4 buckets and 12 objectives total.
Thank you very much, and thank you, Shiloh, so much for
Thank
being
you. It was a pleasure
today.
being here.
We look forward to seeing you in April in Port Huron.
Mm-hmm.
Bye.
Bye.